Well, good morning, friends. Good morning, church, sisters and brothers. Hi, how are you doing this morning? Today is Thursday, July 1st. A new month has begun. And here we are with another episode of PB Reads the Bible, episode 37 on our journey through the book of Genesis. Today's episode is the penultimate episode of that. Penultimate means next to last episode of our journey through Genesis. Because today we'll be doing chapter 49, and tomorrow you'll be doing chapter 50. You'll be doing chapter 50. I'll be doing it today. You'll be seeing it tomorrow. Sorry, I'm about 30 seconds late. I'm going to blame Ron. Ron, it's your fault that I was late starting, sending me a text at like 8:58 with a comment for today. Uh, but hey, I'll mention that in just a moment, just to reemphasize something. Um, so, what was I gonna say? No, I'm all thrown. But good morning, welcome. Good to have everybody here. Thankful for the birth of Austin and the rain. Yes, yes. Baby Austin was born yesterday morning at 3 o'clock after a very lengthy labor period. Austin is our our secretary, our church secretary's grandson. I know she's excited and thrilled and over the moon. And at last report, mother and baby are both doing fine. And it is good to have the rain. You know, it was pretty strong there for a while, but uh, mostly gentle rain, not too bad. Um, Ron, stop sending me texts. At least while I'm trying to get this going today. Um, if you're, I see you're checking in. I see we've got people on there. Good to see everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Pat. Good morning, Cheryl. Good morning, Maureen. Maureen, I'm sure you still might be in the pool today, but not quite as necessary as it was the last couple days. At least if the temperatures in Nipa or anywhere like they are today are down here in along the southern border today. So anyway, keep checking in. You can use that for comments. You can send me a text 570-351-1619, as Ron has been doing. Ron is joining us live this morning. He's all caught up. So Ron's comment regarding yesterday, and basically, yeah, it's what I've been saying all along. He particular is saying, you're saying don't use numbers, don't read numbers literally. That numbers could just refer to um, they really do. They have symbolic meanings, and in particular, 40. Whenever we see the number 40, that means that's a specific number for a long period of time. It's a specific number, but it generally means it just means a long period of time, a generation. So Ron said, can't 17 mean a shorter period of time? Well, 17 isn't exactly a short period of time for anybody, really. Of course, astrologically, yes, 17 years is nothing compared to the billions of years that the world and the universe have been in existence. But 17 years is a substantial period of time. It may not be as long as 40. So I wouldn't say that it was still that it was a short period of time. But this does go back to what I said yesterday. My whole point yesterday was, if we read the story literally, then there are those contradictions. If we read it literally, we'll see the contradictions of boys, but they're like in their 20s. That's when you read it literally. So the point is, don't read it literally. Don't read the stories literally. Don't read the numbers literally. Uh, when they're talking about years, usually it means passages of time. And certain numbers have certain specific meanings. 17 doesn't really have a specific meaning, at least not that I know of. Three, three does. 10 does. I'm sorry, seven does. 10 usually does. 11 and 12 also do have specific meanings. And yes, 40. 40 because it's a long period of time. 12 is considered one of those perfect numbers. So there are 12 sons of Jacob and 12 tribes of Israel, and Jesus had 12 disciples because 12 is considered a perfect number. 11 is sort of an borderline evil number because it's an imperfect number. It's something that's less than perfect. It's something that's less than perfect for that culture, which is why when Judas committed suicide, we're told in the book of Acts that they picked a disciple to replace him because they wanted that number 12. Everything was about 12, so they had to create 12. And seven is symbolic for complete. 10 is often also considered symbolic for complete, I believe. And 3 is fixed. 3 truly establishes something. So when something happens 3 times or is said 3 times, it's extra firm and extra strong and cannot be changed. And when something is said twice, then it's making it special. I forgot about that one. For instance, like it is the best of, quote unquote, the best of the best. Hence the book Song of Songs, often, in past and in some translations might be referred to as Song of Solomon. The better translation of it, the better name for it is Song of Songs, saying that is the best. It is the Song of Songs, like the best of songs. And when we talk about the temple and the tabernacle, there is the holy place, but then there is the Holy of Holies, because it is the best of the best, so to speak. So again, don't be reading all those things so literally. That was the point. If they were boys, then it couldn't have been 17 years. But if it was 17 years, they couldn't have been boys. So don't read so much into the stories. Don't take these stories quite so literally. Adam Hamilton puts it this way. He says, don't read the Bible literally, but read it. He said, don't take it literally, but take it seriously. Take it seriously. So we read the stories throughout the Bible, not literally, but seriously, meaning take them to heart, and think about them, meditate on them, all that kind of stuff. But don't be quite so literal in our understanding. Take them seriously. There's a difference between the two. All right. So today we're on chapter, that was a lot. Today we're on chapter 49. And then when we're done here, you guys get to go about your days and stuff. And I'm probably going to go almost right into my recording for chapter 50, just to wrap it up. Taking next week off as a break as I get ready, do some planning and all that kind of stuff. So on July 12th, Monday, July 12th, will be our first episode of Romans, of our journey through Romans. Not sure exactly how many days, weeks, months that might take for us to get through there, because I can almost guarantee we're not going to be doing a chapter a day. I don't see that happening anyway. It's a dense book, and there's a lot to talk about. And Romans was transformational for many of our fathers and mothers in the faith, Luther and Wesley and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, good morning, Marilyn. Good morning, John and Cindy, and good morning, Marcia. We've got a fairly full crew out there. It looks like we might have 1 or 2 people that haven't checked in, and that's all right. All right, so we're going to do chapter 49. And 49, the heading in this translation says Jacob's last words to his sons. Jacob's last words to his sons. So we know what that means, right? It's obviously the last things he's going to say to his sons. Maybe blessings, maybe warnings, all that kind of stuff. There are going to be a couple of places that I'm going to stop and talk, but mostly we're probably just going to go through this one. So let's get to it, shall we? Chapter 49. Then Jacob called together all his sons and said, "Gather around me, and I will tell you what will happen to each of you in the days to come. Pause. Good morning, Joe. Okay, so yes, sort of a foretelling is what he's saying. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Come and listen, you sons of Jacob. Listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my strength, the child of my vigorous youth. You are first in rank and first in power. But you are as unruly as a flood, and you will be first no longer. For you went to bed with my wife. You defiled my marriage couch. Pause. So unruly as a flood, water is symbolic of chaos many times, especially when referred to as a flood, because the ancient peoples struggled with, they obviously didn't have the hydro technology that we might have today, and they didn't have a corps of engineers to go around and build dams and swales and all that kind of stuff to control where the water would go. So it's unruly. So he's telling his son Reuben, you're uncontrollable. You're like chaos, man. You're chaos, dude. And in particular, he says you're no longer going to be first. Right? This is building, friends. Remember what we've been talking about, the brothers and who is moving into first place, right? And right here, Jacob's saying, you're not going to be first anymore. You're not going to be first anymore. And he says why in particular. The one particular case of where he wronged was when he went to bed with his wife. One of his wives, obviously one of his secondary wives, but a secondary wife was supposed to be treated equally to a first wife. And it isn't even so much that he had sex with her. That's not the thing. But by doing that, since she's technically the property of Jacob, he's misusing his property. And Jacob, I don't know if Jacob kind of like held it against him all those years. He just, he never forgot about it, obviously. And now he's finally giving him the punishment, pronouncing the punishment for his actions. Simeon and Levi, remember those are the first three sons, and these are all the sons of Leah. There's one more son of Leah, but right now we're on numbers 2 and 3. Simeon and Levi are two of a kind. Their weapons are instruments of violence. May I never join in their meetings. May I never be a party to their plan. For in their anger they murdered men and they crippled oxen just for sport. A curse on their anger, for it is fierce. A curse on their wrath, for it is cruel. I will scatter them among the descendants of Jacob. I will disperse them throughout Israel. Pause. He's making you, I told you there's no final exam, right? But he's almost giving you a final exam here in this chapter, reminding us some of the things they did. Those are the two that went through the town of Shechem and killed all the men after they had made an agreement with them over their sister Dinah. But these are the two that went through the town killing everybody. So it seems that Jacob's holding that against them, and finally coming down, pronouncing punishment upon them for their evil actions, for going against him, for making plans without him, for doing all that, for causing him trouble. And he gives them a description that would fit a psychopath, that would fit psychopaths, I suppose I should say. Psychopaths don't start by killing people. They start with torturing animals. So these guys tortured animals and killed a whole bunch of people, right? Now, who was the fourth son of Leah, right? Who was the fourth son of Leah, and who was the fourth son born to Jacob? I gave the answer right off, right? Judah, your brothers will praise you. You will grasp your enemies by the neck. All your relatives will bow before you. Judah, my son, is a young lion that has finished eating its prey. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares to rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from his descendants, until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. He ties his foal to a grapevine, the colt of his donkey to a choice vine. He washes his clothes in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth are whiter than milk. Pause. I'm going to talk about something in the middle of that, but I didn't want to stop in the middle. I wanted to read that whole thing. Wow, what a wonderful, glorious blessing he is giving upon Judah, and what a wonderful prediction of Judah's future. So what the author is doing here is establishing why and how Judah becomes so preeminent amongst the tribes of Israel in later times. Remember, this is probably being written post King David. This is being written post King David, perhaps as late as the period of the exile. Same as Exodus, at least by the time it was fully put together. Same can be said about this, that it's at least post David, if not at the time of exile. David is was this great king who united the kingdom, brought all the tribes together. So this shows, and David comes from the line of Judah. So the author is answering that question finally, completely, how Judah gains that place. And we've seen it as it's gone along here through the chapters. Judah was wrong, but then he repented of it. He ended up realizing some of the bad choices that he had made and things that he had done wrong. Realized that his daughter-in-law was more righteous than he, and he treated her fairly after that. And he put his brothers ahead of himself, was willing to risk his life and him becoming a slave in order to protect his brothers, especially his youngest one, Benjamin. And so Jacob makes this great pronouncement upon him: all your brothers, in other words, all the tribes of Israel, will bow down to you. Now, in that verse 10 has some difficulties in it, in the Hebrew, okay? There are things in there that can be translated multiple ways, and so can be understood from multiple ways. I'm going to talk about some of those. But what I'm going to say, I'll save it till you. And it is the idea of the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until tribute comes to him. It is until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, is how the New Living Translation puts it. And the Hebrew that is translated there as that can be translated as a person, can also be translated as a thing or a place. So the NIV also translates it as a he who it belongs. The NRSV, New Revised Standard Version, doesn't, translates it as until tribute comes to him, until all honor comes to him and to his family. In the Tanakh, the Hebrew, my Hebrew Bible, the Stone translation, doesn't use either of those terms. It says Shiloh, until Shiloh arrives. Now, Shiloh is a place. However, Shiloh can also be understood as Messiah, according to this. Okay, so this passage often gets pointed to as a messianic prophecy, and people very quickly, in fact, in the book of Revelation, Jesus is referred to as a Lion of Judah. Okay, referring to the fact that he came from this tribe of Judah, and so this verse gets pointed to by some Christian commentators as pointing to Jesus, as a messianic prophecy regarding Jesus. And we can certainly understand it that way. depending on which translation of a particular word, because that word's confusing. It can be translated multiple ways. It has multiple meanings. And how we understand who this person is, if we accept that it's a he, that it's a person it's referring to, we can then understand it in a couple different ways. We can understand it as messianic and referring to Jesus. However, we can also understand it as being about David, this great king who united the kingdoms, who before that the united the tribes of Israel into a kingdom, into a single kingdom. Because prior to that, they kind of each had their own, family rulers. Even under Saul, it wasn't a united thing. They still had their own rules, their own people. And it's not until David that all the tribes come together under one king. So the author may be referring to David specifically as this ultimate this ultimate tribute to Judah, the person who was meant to have the ruling staff over the kingdom of Israel, and perhaps including his line afterwards for the land, because after Solomon, the kingdom divides into the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of what? Judah. And David's descendants continue to reign. There's the Davidic monarchy for Judah. So the author might be talking about that. Here's what I'm going to say. You don't have to read it one way. We don't have to read it one way. There's nothing wrong with reading a verse I shouldn't say that. There's nothing wrong with reading a passage in multiple ways. We can gain a lot of understanding when we do that. Just try not to get locked into the one. Just because you've always heard it talked about as being messianic doesn't mean that it's wrong to think that, well, maybe it's not. It actually can be both. This passage can be both. Now, here's an interesting comment that I again from the Tanakh regarding this passage says something that really got me, and it actually deals with a little bit right from the beginning of that. It doesn't pick it up in the New Living Translation. So in the Hebrew, when Rabbi Steinbrink did his second video for us, his second Zoom lecture for us, he said, he referred to the Torah, but he said it goes beyond just the scripture, just what we consider Torah, and includes teachings over the years and stuff like that. And I asked him, I said, in my Tanakh, the Stone Edition, I said there's a lot of footnotes and it refers to comments by rabbis over the centuries. I said, so what you're saying is those then become part of what you're talking about when you use the term Torah. And he said, yes, absolutely. Doesn't mean it becomes part of scripture, so to speak, but these comments then become Torah because they're teachings. So here's a commentary on it. When Judah heard Jacob's rebuke of his brothers, because remember the first three brothers, Reuben, Simeon, and Levi, they were his physical full brothers, and all three of them were basically given harsh sentences from Jacob. Judah probably also expected the same thing for himself because of what he had done with Tamar. So when Judah heard Jacob's rebuke of his brothers, he drew back, afraid that Jacob might chastise him over the affair of Tamar. So Jacob called him soothingly, Judah, you, this word is emphatic, it says, are not like them. You, your brothers, shall acknowledge. So they describe a scene. It's not in the scripture, right? But it kind of fills it in. And doesn't it, that gives you a pretty cool vision, I think, of Judah like drawing back. Oh gosh, here he comes. Oh, I'm next. Drawn back. And then the father gently saying, Judah, you're not like them. Right? Um, Judah would be the source of Jewish leadership and royalty of the Davidic dynasty and the Messiah. And then this last piece really hit me. So admired will you be by all your brothers that Jews will not say, I am a Reubenite or a Simeonite, but I am a Yehudi, Judahite, or Jew. So even the term Jew comes from the clan of Judah and from claiming being part of Judah, regardless of what tribe they might have actually come from. So they're being a Yehudite, a Jew. I found that really cool. Anyway, so I'm glad I have to do this because you can learn new stuff all the time. Anyway, so it's a wonderful pronouncement for Judah. Continuing, Zebulun will settle by the seashore and will be a harbor for ships. His borders will extend to Sidon. Issachar is a sturdy donkey, resting between two saddle packs. When he sees how good the countryside is and how pleasant the land, he will bend his shoulder to the load and submit himself to hard labor. That saddlebags is 2 saddle packs, or it could be sheepfolds. So he's going to settle between 2 sheepfolds. Dan will govern his people like any other tribe in Israel. Dan will be a snake beside the road, a poisonous viper along the path that bites the horse's hooves, so its rider is thrown off. I trust in you for salvation, O Hashem. Gad will be attacked by marauding bands, but he will attack them when they retreat. Asher will dine on rich foods and produce food fit for kings. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is the foal of a wild donkey at a spring, one of the wild donkeys on the ridge. That whole thing could also be translated as a fruitful tree rather than a wild donkey. So not sure which one you have. And those kind of mean 2 different things, don't they? Yeah. Archers attacked him savagely. They shot at him and harassed him, but his bow remained taut and his arms were strengthened by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob, by the shepherd, the rock of Israel. May the God of your father help you. May the Almighty bless you with the blessings of the heavens above, and blessings of the watery depths below, and blessings of the breasts and womb. May my fatherly blessings on you surpass the blessings of my ancestors, reaching to the heights of the eternal hills. May these blessings rest on the head of Joseph, who is prince among his brothers. Pause. So you probably noticed how short some of those statements about the various sons were. Reuben's was okay. Simeon and Levi were together. That was okay. Judah's was a little bit longer. Then each of the other brothers is like just 1 verse, maybe 2, describing them all. And then we get to Joseph. And that's, all these verses, a whole bunch of verses. Excuse me 1 moment. Okay. So there's all those verses for Joseph, and he's a prince among his brothers. All this is going to happen. Then we get to Benjamin, the last one, and again, it's a small one. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, devouring his enemies in the morning and dividing his plunder in the evening. These are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said as he told his sons goodbye. He blessed each one with an appropriate message. Pause. He blessed each one with an appropriate message. Some of those sounded more like curses than blessings. Now, something I should point out too, there are a couple of those that specifically talk about a particular region of Canaan, of the land of Israel, of the promised land of Israel, which weren't assigned or divided up until halfway through Judges. So again, this author is probably using this to also point out why certain people, certain tribes got certain sections of the nation. Oh, it goes back to Jacob's blessings, and he said that that Zebulun was going to be by the sea. All right, so that's probably what the author is doing, because those weren't divided up until much later. So let's and is establishing these are the 12 tribes of Israel. Who's not mentioned are Manasseh and Ephraim, even though Jacob had said they're now my sons, but he already blessed them. He already took care of that. So here we go. Then Jacob instructed them, "Soon I will die and join my ancestors. Bury me with my father and grandfather in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite. This is the cave in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre in Canaan, that Abraham bought from Ephron the Hittite as a permanent burial site. There, Abraham and his wife Sarah are buried. There, Isaac and his wife Rebekah are buried. And there I buried Leah. It is the plot of land and the cave that my grandfather Abraham bought from the Hittites." Pause, even though there's just one verse left. Pause. Jacob had already made Joseph swear that he was going to do this, that he was going to take him away. I misspoke yesterday. I don't know what I was thinking. I said, take him with you when you leave. That sounded anyway like I was talking about post-slavery, post-Exodus. What I meant was that he was making Joseph swear that, when I die, you're going to take my body, and not make me wait 400 and whatever years. But so Jacob made Joseph swear that he was going to do that. But here he's making his sons, all of his sons, promise to do it, making the other 11 promise to do it. Why? Does he not trust Joseph? I don't think that's what the case is, nor do the commentaries and things that I was reading, in particular the Tanakh, the Stone Translation. It's not so much that is they're saying he's probably afraid of Pharaoh not letting Joseph go. Joseph is so important in the land of Egypt and is so important to Pharaoh. He is worried, fearful, concerned that Pharaoh won't let Joseph leave. Probably because thinking that Pharaoh would assume that Joseph wouldn't return, that once he leaves the borders, he's never coming back. So he's going to make all of his sons make the same promise to make sure it happens. So last verse of this one, 33. When Jacob had finished this charge to his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and joined his ancestors in death. End of chapter 49. That's kind of an odd thing. He drew his feet up into the bed. I get the image anyway of almost pulling into that prenatal position, pulling the feet up onto the bed, and then he died. Now it is interesting. Again, in the Tanakh, and one of the comments here on verse 33, that there was Rabbi Yochanan said, "Our father Jacob did not die." Okay, he maintains that Jacob did not die, even though the Torah relates below that he was mourned, embalmed, and buried. That's a teaser for tomorrow's reading. Most commentators understand this statement by Yochanan Most commentators understand this statement to imply that Jacob lives on spiritually because his offspring maintain his heritage. Because his offspring maintain his heritage. Remember, you only get life beyond this life through your descendants. And so Yochanan is saying that Jacob is still alive because we're here. I think that ties together very nicely. Well, friends, that's it for today's reading. Oh, you are welcome, Pat. You are welcome. I do pray every day that you find this time beneficial and that God has spoken to you in some way through what I've said, through what I've read, that you've learned something or relearned something, whatever the case may be. And so, my friends, I will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Well, you'll see me, I won't see you. And as you go about your day, today, every day, be blessed, my friends, as you look and see and recognize and hear God active and alive.